My name is Laurel Rosen. I'm the president and CEO of the Santa Monica Chamber. Oh. Thank you. So first of all, we're really thrilled to have you here today for International Women's Day, celebrating Women's History Month. Sure. So the Chamber is proud to partner with the Commission on the Status of Women for today's celebration in honoring women who advocate against all forms of discrimination while empowering women and inspiring social change. I'd like to give special recognition to our Chamber members present today and thank you for being a part of the Chamber family. As one of the largest and most active chambers in our region, we are the catalyst for business growth, the convener for leaders and influencers, and the champion for stronger communities. So please join our 800 members to share Chamber's mission to create a strong local economy and a high quality of life for our city. So at this time, I'd like to recognize our city leaders who are here today with us. So it's Councilwoman Anna Hara, not in Congress yet, but thank you. Anna. City Manager Rick Cole, give him a shout out. I think he's over here. And I'd like those lights up again a little bit. It's a light show. It's not last call, I don't think. It's a little early for that. Assistant City Manager Katie Lichtig. Deputy City Manager and Director of Policy Anuj Gupta. Also present, we'd like to thank Zachary Geidzik from Supervisor Sheila Kuehl's office, Kobe Harriman from Senator Ben Allen's office, Aditi Sharkawar from Assembly Richard Bloom's office, and Aurelia Friedman from Congressman Ted Lieu's office. They've all provided certificates of recognition for our honorees today, available for viewing in the foyer. So, this year's theme is Visionary Women, Champions of Peace and Nonviolence. I'd like to quote a Nobel Peace Laureate, Mairead Maguire. If you want to reap the harvest of peace and justice in the future, we will have to sow the seeds of nonviolence here and now in the present. So it's clear, we must start with each other. Women must support women in order to change the world. Give yourselves a round of applause. So the Outstanding Women Leaders Award was created to celebrate women whose courage, tenacity, and vision have propelled them positions of leadership, becoming role models for women everywhere. As you'll hear later, we're honoring two such visionary women. Julie Pilot, mentor, community activist, and head of global operations at Beat One Apple Music. And Marianne Williamson, lecturer, activist, best-selling author, and yes, even a presidential candidate. Give them a round of applause.
Did you ever introduce the police chief as well?
Yes. And before we go further, the one thing that's really nice about Santa Monica is there's a lot of women in power. And there's one more woman I'd like to acknowledge that is here with us today, our Chief of Police, Cindy Renaud. So this event is creating a legacy for women leaders, and I'm so happy to acknowledge some of our past honorees joining us today. Please stand when you hear your name. We have Maya Paley, and please hold your applause till the end. Elaine Polachek, Malika Chopra, and Bettina Duval. Please stand to be recognized. So really, that's what's special about OWL. It creates a space for women to draw strength and inspiration from each other. When I look around this room, I know that we're doing it. I know that our mission is being fulfilled. So thank you for being with us today. So I'd like to leave you with a quote from Anne Frank. Everyone has inside of her, and excuse me, gentlemen, indulge me, everyone has inside of her a piece of good news. The good news is that you don't know how great you can be, how much you can love, and what you can accomplish, and what your potential is. So I am hoping today that you'll be inspired to make a difference in other women's lives and go out there and achieve your own greatness. And thank you very much for being with us. And at this time, I'd like to start the program because we have a great program this morning. And I want to thank our lead sponsors, Water Garden. Give them a round of applause. Broadband. Give them a round of applause. And thanks to all of our other wonderful sponsors that you see around these screens that we're trying out today. I hope you enjoy these screens in the room today on these screens. So we have 4 fantastic raffle baskets. Of course, as a chamber, we have to do raffles, right? That's how we roll. Valued over $1,000 each. So if you didn't get your tickets, get your tickets. And we do have raffle sellers. Can I see the hands of raffle sellers, please? I know we've got a few in here. There is one very loud man over there. Give him a round of applause. Now you are in for a very big treat. We're going to kick off the morning with a moment of connection led by Dr. Sasha Marie Spear, artist, healer, and founder of Sawubona, an organization focused on connecting humans through art. She's also brought these beautiful pictures today. And she will be joined by the wonderful singer, Emily Rose Lezen. Ladies, take it away.
Thank you, Laurel. Hello and good morning, everyone. We live in a world where we are more and more connected to devices such as our phone and computer. But we are less and less connected to the people on our left, our right, behind us, and in front. This lack of human connection has been shown in research to not only be one of the leading causes of addiction, but also of feeling overwhelmed. I think as leaders here this morning, many of us can likely relate to the latter. So, we're going to kick off this morning with a moment, more than a moment, of authentic human connection. If you could all please stand up. Face the person next to you, about a foot apart. Didn't plan on this, huh? All right. Okay, so please face your partner. If we could please keep the volume down. So if you found a partner, arms at your sides. Please be quiet. You're going to look your partner directly in the eyes. This may feel uncomfortable at first. All right, guys, let's keep the volume down. Keep the volume down. This is completely normal. Let's try to stay quiet. So please look your partner directly in the eyes. Give yourself a moment to let go of any fear, anxiety, judgment, resentment, doubt. Relax. We're going to stay like this for a few minutes. Emotions may come up, and that's normal. Allow them to come, but please stay present and be with yourself and with your partner. Breathe. Feel the power that the person standing in front of you carries. Imagine what is possible for you, what is possible for the person standing in front of you. Imagine what could be possible if the two of you created together. And for all of us in this room, if we created together as a community. There is a power in choosing who you are that impacts the people around you, that in turn impacts our world. Please acknowledge your partner and take a seat. There's a piece of paper and a pen right in front of each and every one of you. Find the paper and the pen. Some of you have to share pens. On that piece of paper, I would love for you to write your intention. This is the thing that because of you happens around you. So for instance, because of me, people feel joy. People have compassion. There's love, authenticity, freedom. This is who you are for the world. One word. We're going to have some ballerinas coming by in a few moments to collect these. These will be put into an art piece that represents the power of choice and intention as individuals and as a community. Thank you. Sawubona.
So let's give Sasha a big round of applause. So that might have been wonderful for some, uncomfortable for others, but isn't it nice to take a couple of minutes and just stop and do nothing and just look at someone else? So thank you very much. So we're happy to be at the historic and beautiful Fairmont Hotel and Bungalows. I want to thank Matthew and the team, SPAT. Let's give the staff a big, big round of applause, please. And let's give Gigi DePortalis and my team a big round of applause for creating this. So please help me welcome to the stage a friend to many, Matthew Lehman from the Fairmont. Matthew.
I have to confess, this is a really, really intimidating room, so. It is a pleasure to welcome you to the Fairmont Miramar Hotel and Bungalows and to be part of such a terrific event. And many thanks to all of those that put in a lot of tireless work to make this happen. I just have a few quick thank yous and I will get out of your way. Laurel already said it, but I want to thank the team here, those in the room and then the back cooking and doing all the real work that makes things like this happen. So thank you very much, everyone. I'd also like to thank the leadership team here at the Miramar, which I'm proud to say are more than half women, for all of their amazing work that they do every day all across this hotel, and more importantly, for putting up with me every day. So thank you very much. And I'd also like to say thanks to all of you. As the father of two little girls, I can't be more appreciative or appreciative enough of what you do every day to set an example and create the change that is going to continue to give them opportunity and a great community for them to be a part of when they're older. So thank you, all of you in the room. Appreciate it.
everyone. I'm Sylvie Gazarian. I'm chair of the Commission on the Status of Women and treasurer of the Association of California Commissions for Women. The thank you. The COSW is so grateful to have this 9-year partnership with the Santa Monica Chamber and Al Lee's celebrating Women's History Month and International Women's Day. Honoring women and girls is something we ought to do every day of the year, but we actually have an official 31-day period in which we do so loudly and proudly. Give yourselves a round of applause. Knowing that the majority of the population in Santa Monica is women, the well-being of our community is always at the forefront of the COSW's work as we make progress. Many times we as women and girls are told, "You can't do that." And you know what we say? "Yes, I can, and I will." And, thank you, and it shows because we are continuing to make groundbreaking strides. More than ever, we now have the power and we must stand together and use it for ourselves and also for those who don't have a voice or power to do so. Our Commission's goals are investigation, advocacy, and policy development for issues relevant to women and girls. We continue to remain committed to human rights and do not tolerate violence, discrimination, or harassment of any kind, pay inequality, and the abuse of power. I have my fellow COSW commissioners here who can also say, "Yes, we can," each day by thinking equal, building smart, and innovating for change. Commissioners, raise your hands. Recently, the COSW recommended that the city consider legislation to protect hotel workers from sexual violence, unreasonable workloads, and provide comprehensive education and training. Upon hearing this recommendation, Council unanimously voted to support our request and has directed staff to return with local laws to protect hotel workers in all areas the COSW outlined. We are grateful to the Council for moving this groundbreaking recommendation forward and to the city staff working to make this happen. We also are now working with Mount St. Mary's University on data collection to produce a current report on the status of women and girls in Santa Monica, which will highlight citywide achievements and areas of improvement. We look forward to sharing this report with all of you in the year ahead in order to continue to innovate for change. Each year, the COSW mentors a young woman from a local high school to inspire them to be involved with community change and encourage them to one day run for office. While Kimberly, our COSW mentee and liaison from Samo High, can't be with us today, for the second year in a row, she attended the Young Women's Conference focusing on leadership and those who have an interest in politics and civic engagement. She went again because she learned so much and shares her excitement with her fellow students. She also has a dream to become an FBI agent. We are so proud of her and her goals and embrace her. Our work does not stop there as we make progress on other areas. All forms of harassment and sexual assault, homelessness, pay equity, domestic violence, human trafficking, getting out the vote to high school and college students, advocating for legislation, and running for office. We will continue to think equal, build smart, and innovate for change. In fact, this year we worked with over 30 partners to put together a thoughtful month-long calendar of events based on this year's national theme, Visionary Women, Champions of Peace and Nonviolence. A copy of the calendar is at your place setting is a testament to how community comes together to educate, mentor, and celebrate the important role women and girls have and continue to have in shaping Santa Monica and the world. We encourage you to attend these events. In addition, we have a powerful photo exhibit on display in City Hall from students from Samo High and women photographers from the APA. We invite you to go see how a picture is worth 1,000 words. In fact, we have one of the APA women photographers here today. Thank you. As we celebrate and honor Marianne Williamson and Julie Pilat for our International Women's Day breakfast today, let us also not to forget to think equal, build smart, and innovate. Recently, I was asked if I was a feminist. I said, yes, I am, and explained that feminism, by definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal rights and opportunities. It is the right to be paid the same as our male counterparts. It is the right to make decisions about our own bodies, and it is the right to not be abused, assaulted, intimidated, or threatened in any way ever by those in power or anyone. In this room, we have many diverse humans who are and can be visionaries and champions of peace and nonviolence. And each of us can always take action and make a difference in the lives of others. It is our responsibility to look out for one another, and we encourage each of you to innovate for change and to be involved in the conversation. Today I say to you, yes, you can make change. Whether it's mentoring, voting, providing financial support, hiring women for leadership and board positions, running for office, paying women equally, supporting victims and survivors, or volunteering. We must think equal, build smart, and innovate for change. The only way to do this is to commit to change and to advocate for each other. Let us all continue to be visionaries for human rights through peace, nonviolence, focusing on justice and equality for all. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Cindy Giordano-Taylor, Senior Director of Marketing with CBRE for Water Garden, an inspired and exciting creative office campus right here in Santa Monica at Olympic and Cloverfield. So thank you all very much for being here this morning. Julie Pilat is head of global operations for Beats One on Apple Music alongside creative director Zane Lowe. Beats One is the 24-hour live stream on Apple Music, broadcasting from Los Angeles, New York, and London, and is an exciting new music discovery platform on the world's fastest growing streaming service. Prior to her time at Beats One, Julie moved to Los Angeles in 2002 to work at iHeartRadio, formerly Clear Channel, at KISS FM as assistant program director and music director. While programming at iHeart, Julie also hosted a weekly new music live stream show called The Weekend Mixtape, and was instrumental in breaking numerous artists from Nicki Minaj to Jason Derulo, MIA, Mac Miller, One Republic, Childish Gambino, and many more. Outside of Beats, she is a volunteer with youth mentoring and is a lifetime director at a place called home in South Central Los Angeles. Julie is the governor of the Los Angeles chapter of the Grammy Board and also has a passion project interview series called the Idea Foundation, where every month she interviews someone who changed her life. Please help me to congratulate Julie for being one of our 2019 OWLI honorees and welcome her to the stage. Julie.
Thank you. At 29 years old, I felt like I'd hit rock bottom. My life was completely out of control. I became an instant foster care mom to a 15-year-old and her 1-year-old baby. I was talking to somebody this weekend, and she said, a 15-year-old and a 1-year-old, could you have made it any harder? And I said, yes. We were also in the middle of an attempted murder trial. I was running low on money. I was stressed out. How did I get there? So I'm an only child, and I grew up in Seattle being fairly independent. I was a big music nerd and babysitting the entire neighborhood by the time I was 12 just to afford a subscription to Billboard magazine. When I was 14, a DJ came to my junior high career day. I was asking a million questions, and he asked me if I'd like to help out at the radio station. By the time I was 16, I was working part-time at Safeway and Taco Bell just to get enough money for gas to drive to 3 radio stations and work for free. I continued working in radio through college and landed at the end of my junior year what I considered my dream job as a music director and midday host in Seattle. By 25, I was recruited to move to LA and program one of the biggest pop radio stations in the world, Kiss FM. I loved my life, but I never stopped working, even to breathe. I was at the center of the music business, at concerts, in studios, and out every single night. Within a couple years, I began receiving awards and accolades like Music Director of the Year and making Billboard's Women in Power list. I gave back and mentored underserved youth in South Central. I'd paid off my student loans, got my first condo. By almost anyone's standards, I had worked hard, dreamed big, and made it on my own, all by myself. But let's back up. When I first moved to LA, I started volunteering as a mentor at a place called Home in South Central. My first mentee, Vicky, and I were matched when she was 12 years old and in foster care. She was introverted but sweet, and she had big dreams but was unsure. Every 6 months, she had to take her suitcase to court, not knowing if the judge would have her go home with her dad or to a new foster care. One day, I asked her where she wanted to live, and she told me she loved her dad, but she didn't know if he could give her the things that she needed. I asked naively what she needed, thinking maybe it was a new pair of Jordans or money for college. And she looked at me and she said, you know, things like food, shelter, supervision. At 14, Vicky got pregnant, and she had a baby. The system placed her back with her father, and the courts didn't think that they could place a teenage mom and her baby, so they sent her home to the father who couldn't give her what she needed. He essentially abandoned her almost immediately while staying at a different girlfriend's house for weeks at a time. I would visit and bring food and diapers on the weekend, but neither one of us knew what to do with that baby. I mean, car seats seemed impossible. Flying roaches dive-bombed the apartment as we screamed and ran outside. She had no transportation or cell phone. Vicky's mom was on crack and had been not in the picture for a lot of years. There was no money, no resources, and no one to teach her how to be a mom. Vicky was a 15-year-old girl living without parents and living in survival mode. She was desperate to leave that neglectful home of her father and wanted to get back into foster care. So she was staying at her boyfriend's house a lot. He lived on one of the worst streets in South Central. There were warring gangs living on the same street. His 2 grandmothers were in opposing gangs and hadn't spoken to each other for 30 years. One day, Vicky and her boyfriend, Jose, were in the front yard with the baby, and the house got shot up. Their friend got shot. The gang ran out of bullets and put a gun to her boyfriend's head and said they'd be back. Suddenly, my 15-year-old mentee and her 1-year-old baby had nowhere to stay. I knew she was trying to get back into foster care. I knew she couldn't get back to her dad's, and I knew she couldn't stay in the line of fire. And so I panicked and said, "You're coming with me." which wasn't the craziest idea because there was actually a school for teen moms with a dorm on campus called St. Anne's, walking distance from my house. Social services needed to officially place her there, and they were in no hurry. Since the court date with Vicky's dad hadn't happened yet, and I wasn't getting support to help with the kids from social services, we didn't have daycare. And even back then, temporary daycare, if it was available at all, was $75 a day. Meanwhile, at KISS FM, I was on call for my job 24 hours a day. If an artist was coming to Ryan Seacrest at 6 a.m., I needed to be there. If we had a concert that ran until midnight, I needed to be there. If I was in a movie and my phone rang, I needed to step outside and take the call. I always answered my phone. I was always on. Well, one afternoon we were running errands and Vicky needed to go into WIC to handle some paperwork. The baby was fussy, so I took him to Starbucks, or we walked to Starbucks, and we waited outside for Vicky. I was holding the baby in one hand and Starbucks in the other, and I had my phone in my back pocket. And then it started to ring. And I was just barely able to cradle the baby on my hip and move the hot coffee over here, and he started to cry. This could be normal to the moms in the room, not to me. I grabbed my cell phone out, and it was my big boss, 911. And of course, the baby started to wail. And I couldn't really console him with the coffee in this hand and the phone here, and I didn't know what to do. And I looked around for somewhere to place the coffee or set the baby, and I couldn't answer the phone. And the boss went to voicemail, and I felt sick because for the first time in my entire life, I had to put work on the back burner. Suddenly, the police, social services, and having 2 kids evolved into a giant lifestyle distraction from my dream job. And after years of overachieving, setting goals, and smashing them, I instantly had 2 kids and no answers. My life was completely out of control. This was me at 29. For the first time in my life, I had to ask for help. I booked everyone I knew who had a non-traditional working schedule to babysit. We had interns, we had actors, friends of friends, and even psychics in rotation at my house. Families of other kids we knew at a place called home raised their hands to help by providing daycare or rides for Vicky. The people who were deemed less fortunate and living in poverty that I put on my angel wings and set out to help by volunteering ended up saving my life. Peers were offering me cash for diapers, and I'd take their money. The mentoring program took Vicky to all her court dates, and Groovy, one of the original mentees, who was now working for the mentoring program, even went door to door in South Central, knocking on gang members' doors, telling them to leave Vicky alone. I scheduled friends to help with doctor's visits, welfare appointments, and weekend field trips. In one situation, one of my girlfriend's parents had just moved from New York to LA, and they heard about Vicky and the baby, and they asked if they could take them to the zoo. Sure, people I've never seen before in my life, take them. For someone who had never asked for help in her life, I quickly became air traffic control. I'd always been independent, thinking I didn't need help, or I would feel guilty for not being able to do things myself, but I took all the help I could get. And the funny thing is, people loved helping me. It gave them purpose. They were invested in Vicky and the community. It made us all stronger. Somehow we got through it. Vicky's life has been since very much 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Today, she's doing great. She's a great mom, a dental assistant, and living on her own. The people who helped me at that time are friends for life. They may have started as coworkers, neighbors, or music industry peers, but they became family. And last year, my girlfriend Amy, the one whose parents had just moved here from New York, she had her own family emergency. Amy's mom had a stroke. Her dad was upset. Amy spent days on end at the hospital navigating major medical decisions and needed support. I went to go visit. When I walked into the room, her mom was completely out of it and heavily medicated. We hugged, we cried, we walked out into the hall. She was terrified. After catching me up on her mom's condition, we walked back inside, and she said, "Mom, do you remember Julie?" And her mom sat there and stared at me silently. And she said, "That's okay, Mom. I'm sure when you met Julie before, it was at really big events with a lot of people or like birthday parties." And then Amy laughed and said, "Or do you remember the time that you and Dad, when you first moved to LA, took Julie's 2 foster kids to the zoo? That girl, the teenage girl, and her baby?" And her mom lit up. She did remember. And I am not a scientist. I don't know what part of your brain is affected by a stroke or how your heart fires off signals when the right memory is triggered, but I saw her light up. And I saw it give her life. Over 10 years later, that memory resonated with her mom and brought her joy while she was in the hospital recovering from a stroke. As someone who's volunteered for a really long time, I know that helping people makes you feel good. And in the long term, it helps you too. But never in a million years did I think that accepting help from a stranger would be something that would bring them joy in one of their darkest moments. I wept. When I first started volunteering at a place called Home, I learned about Sawubona. It means I see you. Often in our culture, our kids are watched, but rarely are they seen. Every mentoring session I attended would start with Sawubona. The kids would respond, "Yabo Sawubona," which means I see you seeing me. It's a powerful thing to see someone's gifts. We move so fast today while being constantly attached to our phones. It's a miracle we see people at all. One of my favorite pieces of advice from Marianne Williamson is if you're ever stuck somewhere in a crowd you don't want to be, like the DMV or the airport or a grocery store line, is to spend time seeing people. Whether you call it Sawubona or a Namaste or something else, Marianne says to look at their faces silently and think, the light in me sees the light in you, or the love in me sees the light in you. And it's amazing. Quietly doing that brings each person into focus. Somehow you instantly feel better. And let's be clear, she also says, don't ever say it out loud because people will think you're crazy. But it's almost as if you give a silent blessing or a Sawubona. I've spent years having the privilege of seeing people's gifts. Through mentoring, I saw gang members turn into college graduates. In music, I've watched the greatest creatives go from aspiring artists to selling out arenas. While I showed up to help others, I had no idea I would learn a lesson that would change my life. It's one thing to see someone for their gifts, Sawubona. It's a whole other thing to be vulnerable and to ask for help and give people the gift of letting them help you, letting them use their gifts. Thanks. I know when things in the world or politics get overwhelming, I find comfort by trying to make a difference in my own backyard. But I can't do it all by myself. I need help. And whether you have resources that could support a place called Home or youth mentoring, or if you want to listen to my podcast, The Idea Fountain, or tell a friend about it, it all matters. Share your gifts, try to see others, ask for help. And I'll do my best to try and help you too. We're all in this together. We have a powerful group here today: community leaders, artists, healers, founders, my crew from Apple, entrepreneurs, and even a presidential candidate. I see you, I see your gifts, and thanks to everybody hanging out in Santa Monica to see mine. Yabo Sawubona. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie, for those inspirational words and such an inspirational story. My name is Bettina Duval, and I am honored to have been a previous OWL recipient. Then I was honored for my work in electing women. For the last 30 years, I have spent my time and energy making sure that women are elected to public office. I subsequently since have given my organization over to a group of younger women because I'm committed to mentoring the next generation of future leaders. So now my company is Broadband, and we manufacture hardware for cable television. It was a changing world, but I am now currently an entrepreneur of a women-owned business. Thank you. It is my honor to introduce Marianne Williamson. As a candidate for U.S. President in 2020, Marianne Williamson is an internationally acclaimed lecturer, activist, and author of 4 #1 New York Times best-selling books. She has been one of America's most well-known public voices for more than 3 decades. 7 of her 12 published books have been New York Times bestsellers, and Marianne has been a popular guest on television programs such as Oprah, Good Morning America, and Bill Maher. Marianne is a native of Houston, Texas. In 1989, she founded Project Angel Food, a Meals on Wheels program that serves homebound people with AIDS in the Los Angeles area. To date, Project Angel Food has served over 11 million meals. Marianne also co-founded the Peace Alliance. Please help me to congratulate Marianne Williamson for being our 2019 OWLY honoree and welcome her to the stage.
Thank you so much. What an honor to be here. I have been moved by the words that every woman has spoken. And Julie, I don't know where you are, but that was just amazing. Thank you so much. This is Women's History Month. We're celebrating that. As I think it was Sylvia said earlier, we are saying it loud and saying it proud. We are also marking International Women's Day. But for me this month, it has seemed to me that it's been less about the history that has already been made, honoring our foremothers and all of the women who have done incredible things before us, but also remembering that to women 50 years from now, 100 years from now, we will be the ones who made history. And this generation of women is making history. There is no doubt about that. People will say decades from now, thinking about us, that, man, we did it. However, I think the bigger question for us now is that we be remembered as having done it well. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. I think one of the shadow sides that we have to look at among us collectively is the tendency to become perhaps a little more self-congratulatory than is really called for. And I think sometimes also we are so concerned with the power that we have not yet gotten, and also the power that we want to get, that perhaps we need to think a little more and have a little more discussion about what we are doing with the power that we have. And for that conversation, I think it's perfect to piggyback off the things that Julie was saying. When Julie was talking about Vicki, I think it's very important that we remember that in America today, there are millions of Vickys. And as important as it is, and as always necessary as it will be for us to address on a personal level those Vickys that come into our lives the way that Julie did, there are also some other deep issues for us to mind within ourselves about why it isn't done more often. First of all, there is a difference between helping and codependency. I'm so glad, I'm so glad, Julie, that you actually celebrated helping, because we are living at a time when people have actually denigrated the notion of helping. We are living at a time when we have turned old-fashioned selfishness into some artificial concept of self-care. So good on you, because if you had met Vicki today, you probably would have been surrounded by people who told you not to help Vicki because you really have to take care of yourself. So in order to stand within the power that we have to also look not only at the resistances of a society in helping the Vickys of the world, but also the sly and insidious resistances inside ourselves. There are deeper issues in Vicki's life even than the ones that Julie was discussing. Not that they are not expressions of what Julie was discussing, but the deeper and darker realities, including the fact that a $91 billion a year sex trafficking industry has infiltrated the foster care system. There are millions of American Vickys. There are millions of American children who go to school every day in schools that don't even meet minimum safety requirements, that many don't even have functioning toilets, and in classrooms where there are not the minimum school supplies necessary to teach a child to read. If a child has not learned to read by 8 years old, the chances of him or her graduating from high school are drastically reduced, and the chances of him or her one day being incarcerated are drastically increased. When Julie was talking about the violence on the streets of Vicki's neighborhood, these children, and there are millions of them, live in what's called today America's domestic war zones. These children are experiencing what psychologists say is PTSD no less severe than the PTSD that is experienced by returning veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. But the PTSD in a returning veteran is post-traumatic stress. For the Vickys of the world, and I say again, there are millions of them. This is present traumatic stress, because the stress and the trauma is repeated every single day. It is triggered every single day. To just even imagine what it was like for this child to go before the judge with her suitcase. Does she go back to the father, who even at her age, she could use words like, I don't get food and I don't get supervision? Or is she going back to a foster care system that might not even be the same foster care family she was there before? And can any of us even imagine what it's like to just be finding yourself in some family and you really, at a certain point, aren't sure, are they friend or foe? Now, these children are not old enough to vote. And because they're old enough to vote, they're not a constituency for anyone. And because they're not old enough to work, they have no financial leverage. And in America today, where our government, because of the undue influence of money, has become really little more than a system of legalized bribery, in which advocacy for short-term profit maximization for huge multinational corporate conglomerates is placed before advocacy for the Vickys of the world, before advocacy for people of this country and around the world, and before advocacy for the planet. What possible chance do these Vickys have? They don't all meet Julie's. What they should have is the women of America. And there are not only Vickys all over this city, not only are there Vickys all over this country, there are Vickys all over this world. Now, I was told that we were talking today about being champions of peace and being champions of nonviolence. Desperate people should be seen as a national security risk because desperate people do desperate things. Desperate people are more vulnerable to ideological capture by genuinely psychotic forces, whether those psychotic forces are gangs in the city of Los Angeles or terrorist organizations somewhere else in the world. Now, we spent $718 billion this year alone in our military, and our military is certainly something to be deeply respected. This is not in any way a criticism of our military, but it is a critique and submitting to you, my sisters, what we have to think about in terms of what that national security agenda is, because that national security agenda is based almost entirely on preparing for war as opposed to waging peace. And guess how you wage peace, ladies and gentlemen? Guess what is statistically absolutely evidence of what wages peace, both domestically and internationally? It's going to come as a surprise to no one. Expanding economic opportunity among women, reducing violence against women, expanding educational opportunities for children, and ameliorating unnecessary suffering wherever possible. If we want peace in this world, if we want peace in South Central, if we want peace in America, if we want peace for our children 50 years from now and 100 years from now, there is nothing more powerful than for the women of the United States to stand up and to say about the fact that so many millions of Vickies exist in the richest country in the world, and so many Vickies exist all over this world that do not have to. The women of America could do ourselves a favor and say very politely and very kindly, this shit stops now. And that's what happens when we make that one aha, when we take that one shift in our own perception away from thinking about how we just might help one child to realizing that it is not only in the private sector, where I'm sure that there are many, not only are there many Vickies in this city, I'm sure there are many Julies in this room. So many of us who are doing everything that we possibly can to make change in the lives of people. But it's also important for us to realize private charity, and I'm committed to private charity. I did found Project Danger Food. I've been a nonprofit activist my entire adult career. However, we need to make the shift, I believe, in our thinking into the realization that no amount of private charity can compensate for a basic lack of social justice. And so not every Vicki is going to be lucky enough to meet a Julie. And another thing that we in cities like this and among women of means and men of means that we need to recognize, you know, we will not, one of the things that has been talked about here already on the stage today had to do with authenticity. This country can heal and this world can heal. But in order to do so, we have to be real and we have to be honest and we have to be authentic. Enough with thinking that as long as some major corporation gives $1 million in private donation, that's lovely. And I've done enough fundraising among private corporations to whom we are extremely grateful, whether it has to do with Project Angel Food or anything else. But we are living at a time where corporate forces in America suck billions of dollars out of the system, and then we're supposed to be all excited because they give $1 million in charity. We need to see through this. We need to recognize how the game is now functioning in America. And we need to realize that until we do, there will always be these Vickies. And these Vickies are growing up. And these Vickies' children are growing up. And we all know, the evidence is clear, none of us are stupid about this, we all understand. We all understand the through line to the way that Vicki was treated by her father, to the fact that she then ended up a 14-year-old pregnant girl. The power of American women to change all this is something so stupendous. We were talking earlier, we were shown earlier about how we could look at each other and realize the power in me and the power in you, the love in me, the love in you. Let's use it. Let's not just talk about it, and let's not just think of our own private circles. Yes, it begins with our own private circles, and yes, it then extends into supporting women, but it's supporting other women. But we have to allow ourselves to extend into places where it is not easy to look, it is not easy to act, it is not easy to admit, and if we do name it, if we are real, if we are authentic, we will not necessarily get applause or approval from the people we might want to hug us. But I think that we need to remember that a meaningful life is not a popularity contest. A meaningful life is not a popularity contest. And any woman who, if everything you're saying is always getting applause, probably isn't yet saying the right thing. And one of the things that we all know what Vicki's color is. We don't have to ask what Vicki's color is. These are the deep, dark secrets, the deep, dark character defects in America. I've lived for the last 35 years working in the transformational field of personal growth and transformation. Los Angeles gave me my career. It's no accident, you know, when Julie was talking about the fact that there were psychics who were part of the babysitting team. I know all that. You know, in Los Angeles, we can be so out about certain conversations and because we all know it's true. And the richness, the diversity of the multidimensionality of the way we see healing our lives in this city. We know, this is California, we know that changing things is more than just fixing things on the outside. Changing things has to do also with fixing things on the inside. Change has to do with the multi-dimensions of emotion and psychology and spirituality and morality. That's one of the reasons I'm running for president. I'm running for president because the politics of today is so narrow. It is based on this old-fashioned Newtonian paradigm where the world is seen as a machine, and if you just fix it on the outside, tweak it on the outside, make these changes in policy out here, that will somehow transform the society. But it won't, because whether you're talking about a society or you're talking about just an individual, you have to transform, not just fix. And you transform by changing things on the inside as well. And so all that a nation is a collection of individuals. So the same psychological and spiritual and moral dynamics that we have to face in our own lives in order to heal, we also have to face in the life of our nation. We have to look at America's character defects. And one of America's character defects is that there are so many Vickies. It is significant to remind ourselves we're the richest country in the world. Millions of Vickies, millions of children living in constant chronic trauma in the richest country in the world. This should be seen as a national emergency. This should be seen. This should be seen as a humanitarian crisis because it is. If one person neglects a child, we call that a child in trouble. We would say about that person that they are unethical at best and criminal at worst. So what do you call a society that is neglecting these children? And what do you call us if we allow ourselves to acquiesce and to be enrolled into a conversation which so conveniently leaves out those children? And a political conversation that leaves out those children because they don't have any financial leverage. All this shifts, however, when American women wake up. You know, in my work over the last 35 years, and I've met women here who I've known over the years, we all know this. We all know about the work of healing and transformation. And I always say in my work, people don't usually come to me because things are going well. I often see people at their worst, but at the worst time of their lives. But one of the things I've seen in others, and I've seen in myself, and I'm sure you've seen in yourself too, sometimes it's when it's the worst time of our life that we find the best part of ourselves. Because often it's when everything has gone wrong that we are just stripped of all the illusions of what matters. You get a cancer diagnosis, you lose all your money, you lose your profession, you got fired, your child is on drugs, everything that could possibly go wrong has gone wrong. And all of a sudden, in the first 5 minutes, so many unimportant preoccupations just fall away. And that's when you stand naked before your God. You stand naked. It's like, I am stripped of illusions about myself. And you come to that point, as Julie was describing, where you say, help me, not just to people, but often to a higher power than that. And that is when I have seen people become deeply intelligent. That's when I've seen people become noble. That's when I've seen how good we all are. But sometimes you have to make a conscious decision to peripheralize the stupid issues that so assault us in this culture in order to make sure we are focusing on what's important. Martin Luther King said your life begins to end on the day you stop thinking about the things that really matter. And so what I feel about this country is what I feel about individuals. Yes, we're going through a crisis, and we should not in any way underestimate the significance or the critical nature of this crisis. There are assaults on the very foundations of our democracy. And with the way we are treating our climate and continuing to not act in ways we need to act on climate change, we are possibly imperiling the possibility of another 50 or 100 years of life on Earth. Yes, it is that serious. This is not something to distract ourselves from. It is not something to go into denial around. And yet, it is not something to allow our own personal energies to be depleted by anger. Cynicism is just an excuse for not helping. Whining is not an option, and anger wastes time. What we need to do, is rise up. To rise up as other generations have risen up before us, to not indulge. I've been around so long, I know all the trendy words in every season, and the trendy word this year is trauma. Now, I'm not saying that trauma is not real, but I am saying that most of the trauma, not all of it, this is not minimizing our personal traumas, but I think it is reasonable to suggest that most of the personal traumas that people in this room have experienced is almost nothing compared to the trauma that Vicki was already experiencing at 14 years old. We, as a generation of Americans, are more sensitive to our own childhood wounds than any generation before us, and more neglectful of the children in our midst than any generation before us. And it is not just the women and the children here. It is the women and the children all over the world. Right now, there is a conversation about the Taliban in Afghanistan. I remember when Jay Leno's wife was talking about the Taliban way before 9/11. I had read something somewhere, so I was one of those women, and many of us were already very aware of the barbaric ways that the Taliban were treating women in Afghanistan. Now we're at a time where the president wants to withdraw troops from Afghanistan. This is not even to criticize that particular policy, because what's going on there is, are you going to do the terrible thing, or are you going to do the terrible thing? I'm not saying there are any good options here. However, I am pointing out that in order to bring the troops back from Afghanistan, what the administration is doing is making a deal with the Taliban. So they want to make a deal with the Taliban, who basically controls everything in Afghanistan except the capital city. The capital city is controlled by the government of Afghanistan, which wanted to be in the negotiations between the Taliban and the United States, but the Taliban would not allow them in. So the deal that the United States is making is the idea of withdrawing the American troops in exchange for the Taliban promising that there will not be havens in Afghanistan for other terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda or ISIS. Now, once again, this is not even to criticize the policy, because I get how complicated that one is. However, notice how the conversation is going down. The women of Afghanistan are not even mentioned here. Now, I was talking to some very highly placed military officials about what's happening in Afghanistan and about what is proposed to happen and what would be happening. And I said, can you please tell me then, if we do this and we leave and the Taliban is then there, and it's only reasonable to assume they'll take over because you've admitted to me that the army of the government of Afghanistan is not strong enough to fight the Taliban. I said, what is going to happen to the women? And they were just silent. They just looked at me. And one of the men then said, well, ma'am, the women of Afghanistan will be screwed. Now, I'm not saying what we should do, because that is not an easy one to know what to do, although I was offended that the conversation was not even mentioned. When I've been asked on the campaign trail, one of the things I've said is, first, if what I would do about Afghanistan, I said I would get some women of Afghanistan into the Oval Office to tell me what they think. But what I want to say to you is that there is a Gandhian principle called satyagraha, bearing witness. Bear witness to the agony of others. Bear witness to the agony of Vicki. Thank you so much, Julie, for putting it in front of us in a way that we can't not feel. With the women of Afghanistan, let us at least not look away. You know, one of my favorite stories in the New Testament was when the night before the crucifixion in the Garden of Gethsemane, when all of the disciples. Everything in the Bible is metaphysical. It's all code. It's all, symbolism for deeper truths that apply to all of us. That's true of all the great religious and spiritual stories. So the night before the crucifixion, the disciples wanted to fall asleep. It was late at night. Well, we know what that's about. They wanted to fall asleep because it was late at night, but they also wanted to fall asleep the way we all want to fall asleep, because it's too painful to look at what's happening. But Jesus said to the disciples, "Can you not remain awake with me? Remain awake with me in the hour of my agony." Sometimes we don't know what to do. We have examples, though, of people like Julie. Just do something. Help. Don't let anybody convince you that you just really can't take this on right now. We are not porcelain dolls. American women are not porcelain dolls. Yes, I know we're traumatized, but let me tell you something. The people who walked across the bridge in Selma, they were traumatized too, but they kept walking. They didn't know if the bullets were going to come out, the hoses were going to come out, the dogs were going to come out. They were traumatized, but they walked. And those women who got us the right to vote, those suffragettes who were thrown into prison for their marching for suffrage, who then, because of the terrible conditions in prison, were holding a hunger strike, and they put these huge metal contraptions on them. And then where they were force-fed. This is something Hollywood can be proud of, that wonderful HBO movie with Angelica Houston and Hilary Swank, where they did such a marvelous dramatization of what that looked like when these women were being force-fed. They were certainly anxious. They were certainly tense. They were certainly traumatized, but they continued with what they were doing. I envision a world in which so many horrible things could happen, might happen, but the people of the world could honestly look at each other, honestly, authentically, and say, we don't have to worry about that, because the women of America would never let that happen. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the women of Yemen right now could look at each other and say, we don't have to worry that the United States will continue to pay for the sake of $100 billion in arms sales to Saudi Arabia, continue to support Saudi Arabia in prosecuting this war, which is starving tens of thousands of us, including our children. Wouldn't it be amazing if they could say, well, that won't happen, or that will stop now, because we know there is an awakening of the American woman? That's the world I hope that we will envision for ourselves. That is the power that I hope that we will inhabit. That is the path that I hope that we will forge. We have a lot of power. There's a lot of power in this room. Now, let's go use it. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, good morning. I am Annie Gecki. I'm the co-chair of the committee with Chris. I'm also the founder and director of Earth Rights, and I was a former chair of the Commission on the Status of Women. Let me take this opportunity to thank you, each and every one of you, who have come here to celebrate this important event. The International Women's Day is observed across the world every year to celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women from all walks of life. Empowering women is very necessary for bringing gender equality. We are here to express love and gratitude towards women's contributions to our lives and society. The OWL Committee recognizes the significance and the importance of honoring people, exceptional women like Marianne Williamson and Julie Pilot, who have pioneered into new realms of leadership. Join us in the journey, and I too will bring your spirits with me as I present this week at the International United Nations Women's Conference. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Dr. Chris Marrero, and I am the other co-chair with my dear friend Annie. I'm one of the business women in the community and owner of Marrero Psychology. One one of the things I wanted to talk to you today is who the Owls are. We are other businesswomen and bankers, chefs, doctors. We are your friends, your neighbors, moms and sisters. We are the women around you. Can I ask, please, that the women of OWL please stand up? All of the Organization of Women Leaders. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.
And then many thanks to our chamber member for producing this wonderful event, and to the countless volunteers and committee members. I would also like to congratulate our incredible honorees, Julie Pilot and Marianne Williamson. Oh, so honored. You made many of us cry. It's women like these that lead the way for all of us. Let's give them one more round of applause. And of course, thank you to all the local businesses who are our exhibitors. Thank you to all our sponsors, and thank you to all of you being here. Thank you.